All right, so every once in a while, if I run out of video ideas or I'm feeling lazy, I'll go back and I will look at my old videos. So the one that I'm remastering today, it was called Why Every Job Feels Temporary Now: The Decline of Job Security. Of course, I fed this into ChatGPT, tweaked it a few times, added some art, and it came back and it hyper focused on the part where I was talking about Gen Z dog food. In all honesty, it's been so long and I've made 522 videos at this point that I don't remember what I was referring to. So I hashed it a few more times, and this is what I got. This is my introductory monologue. They told us to get an education, follow the rules, and the system would take care of us. But all we got was debt, burnout, and job listings that pay less than rent. Now we're stuck in this endless loop of applying, interviewing, getting ghosted for positions that don't even offer health benefits. They call us lazy, but we're just tired of pretending that canned corporate dog food is a real meal. Gen Z isn't the problem. We're just the first generation to say out loud that the system tastes like trash. I remember when it was making the art for this, and it made a giant can of human dog food. And you guys loved it. I remember thinking to myself at that time that this was something that I was probably going to end up spending more time talking about, because I've said this in a few videos that in today's world, corporations want us to be able to eat dog food. We've gotten to the point in our lives where you're buying a can of dog food that has a picture of a Gen Z worker on the front of it and your dog. You know, dog food for humans. Because overall, the quality of everything in life has declined. I just went to Dutch Brothers and I bought a chocolate milkshake that cost $9. I this should cost $2 or $3 max. $9 for this. I mean, I just don't understand what's happening. The overall quality of jobs has declined, remarkable decline there as well. They want you to be their slaves at this point, and the compensation just isn't there. All right, let's get into our talking point number one: the disappearance of long term careers. Jobs used to mean stability, pensions, promotions, retirement plans. Now, most roles, I really don't like the word role or resource, are built to be short term, high turnover, and disposable. The career ladder has been replaced by a trap door. Well, this is something, long term careers is something that we just don't have at any job that I've ever been at. And it's the first thing that Gen Z notices when they start working for me. It's like, hey, millennial Stan, when am I going to get a raise or a promotion or both? And I just look at them and I just laugh. It's like, I've been here for 3.5 years. There's been no promotions. There's been no significant pay raise. There's nothing here. And learning that to them, you can just see in their face that it devastates them to hear that, because there isn't anything there. My boss tries to fill the candidates that take this job with enthusiasm about this job, and I'm just like, there's nothing here. And it's just stringing people along. I'm too brutally honest to tell them that, yeah, just hold on. After a year, you'll get a nice fat uh, pay increase and title change. But all they have to do is look around at their coworkers that have all been there from between 5 and 10 years that haven't gotten anything. That's all you have to do, is look around at the people that are already there. The signs of burnout are everywhere in corporate America. In fact, I had to call an office manager yesterday and ask her, it's like, hey, why did you send me this email with so and so's person, with this person's name on it? And she said, yeah, we promoted her, but she quit anyway because we promoted her without giving her a raise. So guess what she got? She got what I what I get every year instead of a raise or a promotion. They just give you more responsibility, more work, and you better get it done, or else they're going to give you a terrible review like what I got this year. And that person wasn't going to have it. You're a person with a high level of education. Why would you stay there? And unfortunately, all the Gen Zs come to that conclusion that, ew, I'm not going to get promoted. This isn't a career. I'm flipping burgers at McDonald's. And they run away because this job doesn't pay rent. That's the number one criteria for any job, in my opinion. To be called a job, the job has to pay rent. If rent is $2,300 on average a month, living with roommates does not count as paying rent. Living with roommates is just an extension of living at home. It doesn't count for anything. If you're forced to live with a bunch of weirdos that you don't know from Craigslist, you've already failed at life. To me, jobs provide homes, they provide comfort, they provide vacations. I was just talking to the school teacher this morning at the gym, and she's like, my first question was, where have you been? And she said, I've been on vacation. I went on a cruise for a few weeks. I'm like, and you can afford to do that? And she's like, yes, I can. And I was like, a vacation. Something that died in my life when I was around 15 years old. Little millennial Steen back then had no idea that his life would turn into a flaming dumpster, and that he would spend the rest of his life alone wondering what the heck happened. There's a lot of parts of life, especially about adult life, that aren't happening for a lot of people. Getting your first real job, getting married, getting a mortgage, meeting Susie Rottencrotch behind the Taco Bell. None of these things are happening. In fact, yesterday, one of the last things that Gen Z told me as we were leaving for the day was, well, I got to go home and I'm going to go shake hands with the governor and pretend that nothing's wrong. That's how he justifies his life. He just keeps telling me that I'm going to be happy regardless. And I'm like, okay, you're broke. Your only contact in life is some sort of creature in your house. And you're just going to convince yourself that everything's going to be okay. And I'm telling you guys, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that Gen Z has a terrible drinking problem. I just get that feel. When you meet another person that engages in 7-day-a-week festivities with the old Pearl beer, you kind of have a feel for them. And then they have to mask it with saying that they're fine. Because you have to tell yourself you're fine, or else you're going to find yourself on the rope very quickly. All right, let's get to talking point number 2. Low-wage jobs now come with no training, no benefits, no flexibility, and no future. But they dress it up as entry-level experience. Gen Z isn't buying it. We can smell the dog food under the disguise. You sure can. If you can't smell the dog food when you walk into a job and they make it seem like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but you look around at all the workers. This is what happened on my first day of working at Insight Corporation. They sat me down in the cubicles for the call center, and I just took one look around the room, and I was just like, you know what? This room reeks of desperation and failure. Every person that's there can't afford anything. When you're paying people $14 an hour back then, and you're going to tell them how great this job was. That's the one thing I never understood about working in that call center, is that the supervisor would come up to you and smile and be like, hey man, this job's amazing. This is such a good place to work. And I just look at him like, are you trying to convince yourself of this or me? Because it's not working on me. So you better go, spout your office propaganda somewhere else. And I remember one of the first times that he came over to my desk, and he just looks at me and he says, Millennial Steam, you don't like me, do you? I'm like, I don't have to tell you that, do I? You already know. And he's like, oh my God, we can't train you here. So that's one of the last things he said to me. And I was just like, I don't need any training. What I need is I need a better job. And he just looked at me like most managers have said to me throughout my entire life. You think you're better than this. If you don't think that you're better than the minimum wage, what have you done? Who hurt you? It's one of my favorite expressions, by the way. All right, moving on to talking point number 3. No investment in people, no loyalty from workers. Companies stop training and investing in workers, yet they're shocked when people don't stay. You can't expect loyalty from employees you treat like temps. If you guys have ever worked for a temp agency, it is an awful, awful way to live. Every day, you don't know whether or not you're going to have work, or whether that temp agency is going to be contacted by the company and say, hey, we don't want you to send that person over again. We don't like them. That is a very common thing to happen. Is the employer, which is paying the temp agency significantly more than what they're paying you, right? And they will say something like that. It's like, well, it's not working out. We don't like this guy. He doesn't smile enough. He's not chatty enough. He's not optimistic enough. We don't want this guy here. They just tell you you're not working. That happens enough times, and that temp agency will stop calling you altogether. It's kind of what they do. But the loyalty aspect of any job, we work so that we can be not poor, right? But that's all changed because we work now to be poor. It's just we're slightly less poor. When you open the cupboard at your parole home and you look inside and all you see are cans of dog food because that's all you can afford. Dog food could easily be replaced by ramen in this analogy. It's the lowest form of substance. And I would say that there are days when what I have to eat is almost in the same category as just putting 2 scoops of dirt in my mouth and just telling myself it's steak and lobster, because that's just the world we live in. This is exactly what we do with the types of employment that we accept as well. You're going to drive your Promobile to your crap job at Evil Corp. You're going to sit down and you're going to have to tell yourself, you're going to have to throw in those 2 scoops of dirt into your mouth and tell yourself, this is a good job. But as it's swirling around in your mouth, that this is not a good job. That this job is mindless, repetitive. The management doesn't like you. You don't like them. And they're just tapping their watch to see who's going to come in the door next. Maybe the person that comes in next is actually going to be a person that wants to work there. Maybe that person's going to be even phonier than the last person that was there about needing that job. But what gets me, out of all of what I've just said, is when that occasional good worker ends up in a place like that. They're not drinking the Kool-Aid. So within weeks, maybe even a couple months, depending on how desperate they are, they inevitably have to walk over to the manager and tell them that they're putting in their 2 weeks. Don't do that. Don't ever put in your 2 weeks. They treat you bad, and they would never hesitate to fire you on the spot. Don't give them the benefit of 2 weeks, because something could happen with that job. And at that point, the lack of loyalty on your part, because you gave them 2 weeks, could mean that they tell you that you can't stay anyway. You gave 2 weeks, and they want you gone because you're not a loyal employee. Giving 2 weeks shows that a sort of respect between you and the corporation that you shouldn't have for the corporation. The corporation doesn't like you, and it never will like you, because you won't work for cheap enough. Remember, they don't want to pay you anything. The fact that they have to pay you something irritates corporations, especially executives, because they would much rather pay themselves than to pay you. And that's the way the system is set up. You are the hired help. That's all you are. And when you think that you're more than that, you're not. And once you put in a 2 week notice, is what you're saying to the corporation is you're fired. And then you're going to move on with your life. And they're going to be like, well, what's wrong? Why do you not like this job? And your simple answer is just look around. There's nothing here for me. And the corporation truly expects people to stay in those situations out of sheer desperation, not for any other reason, because they're not concerned with perks or making certain that they put time and energy into you. Every job I've worked at has been the school of hard knocks. Either you're going to train yourself to do the job or you're not going to make it. I'm beyond the point where I can train Gen Z, my current Gen Z. He's not capable of learning or moving past the thought processes or aptitude of a minimum wage worker. There's nothing there, and there never was anything there. They just can't. They're not interested enough to take it upon themselves to provide their own training. And when you have someone that constantly you have to, it's not even having a worker. A lot of these jobs are just daycare centers. And that's what the corporations have to work with. I myself have made it a point to not talk to anyone that I don't absolutely have to talk to, especially anyone above me. I take care of everything, and if I don't know how to do it, well, guess what? I'll just wait for someone else to do it. That's really what it comes down to. All right, our final talking point here. Gen Z sees through the illusion, and that's a threat. We know these jobs aren't real careers. That makes us dangerous because we won't fake a smile while eating corporate scraps. Employees see that awareness as rebellion. If you hire someone to work at a Chipotle, and from the get go, this isn't a 20-year-old or an 18-year-old person fresh out of high school or a 22-year-old fresh out of college. This is a 35-year-old man that can't find a better job. And I'm going to use my friend from physical therapy, her husband, as a prime example. One day he comes into work and he's a high level sales director at some company that I don't even know the name of. Comes into work. He's worked there for over a decade, perfect attendance, great person. But the corporation sees that he's making too much money. And instead of giving him his 2 weeks, they fire him on the spot. Now, they toss him into a job economy that is very harsh right now. Very, very difficult to find anything that's not minimum wage. Searches for a few months, can't find anything better. Now he's 35 and he's working at Chipotle with people half his age. How are you going to motivate that guy into smiling all day, into thinking he's going to stay at this job for any amount of time? Because your investment into a job is defined by how much you're willing to effort are you willing to put forth to learn how to do that job correctly. If the answer is zero, you have a job with incredibly high turnover, which is where I currently work now. The amount of turnover there is frightening to the point where I'm getting anywhere from 300 to 500 units every few months in order to replace the ones that are being lost. That is an incredible waste of money. And I'm not certain if it's even sustainable. But again, billion-dollar corporation, as long as they can keep the lights on, they can keep making money regardless of what they're doing to society. Because a job mill like this isn't helping anyone. The few people that stay there long term, like the tech people, it's not because they want to be there. It's because they can't find anything better. And I think corporations have gotten very accustomed to that. To people who can't find anything better. And that means that people are staying a lot longer at jobs that they otherwise wouldn't stay in. But also, without loyalty from your workers, what do you really have? When you want to offer your workers that proverbial can of dog food and tell them to take it here, just eat this. And your workers kind of like, I don't think I'm ready for that yet. Every time my boss tells me that I need to live with roommates in order to be able to afford housing, I just cringe. It's like, here, millennial steam, eat the dog food. It's good for you. You're like, no, I'm pretty sure that just because you have a picture of me on the outside of the can doesn't mean it's good for me. That's exactly what every crummy job in America is. It's good for you to have a job. No, it's not. It absolutely is not good for me to have that job. So you can keep your paycheck and shove it up you know where because I ain't buying it and I ain't eating your dog food.